In the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, there are a lot of duelists out there. You'll find no shortage of duelists who play cards vastly different from the way you would. Around every corner, you'll find somebody who plays fish, magicians, or zombies. But among us all, one man stands out. The very source of every monster card, trap card, and magic card that Duel Monsters pushes out. The creator of the modern-day dueling age, Maximillion Pegasus. The creator of Duel Monsters really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyways, so everyone watching gets the full scope of what we're covering today. So why don't we begin with where it all began. Pegasus is the president of Industrial Illusions, a company based in California that makes Duel Monsters a fully functional and playable game. With Pegasus himself in the seat of power, and being the very man who brought the game into the modern age, it would be no surprise to know that Pegasus is an expert in the game of Duel Monsters. After all, he has access to a variety of cards in the game that, in the world of the series, never saw release or play in the dueling circuit, due to said cards being too powerful for the game, but we'll touch more on that in a later segment. It's important to note that in the beginning of his life, Pegasus didn't originally intend for his life to take the path that it did, originally wanting to be an artist and dedicating that talent to making portraits of his one true love, Cecilia. Pegasus instead found himself traveling to Egypt in search of a way to revive his now deceased wife. Well, that didn't last long. While in Egypt, Pegasus was confronted by the guardian to the tomb of the Millennium Items, Shadi, who bestowed upon Pegasus the Millennium Eye, after it became apparent that the Eye had chosen Pegasus to be its owner. With the knowledge of the Millennium Items and an idea on how to restore life to his deceased wife, Pegasus strikes a deal with the Big Five, top executives of Kaiba. The deal being that in exchange for forcing Seto Kaiba out of the company and transferring power to him, Pegasus will make use of Kaiba Corp's solid vision technology, along with the power of the Millennium Items he plans to take from the contestants that enter in his Duelist Kingdom tournament. By using both of these, Pegasus intends to use the magic and science to bring back his deceased wife. And on behalf of the Big Five, Kaiba Corp will receive a massive boost to a damaged reputation while under his control. This plan ultimately falls short at the hands of Yugi Moto and his many friends as they enter Duelist Kingdom to save the soul of Yugi's grandpa, Solomon Moto, that Pegasus had captured prior to the Duelist Kingdom tournament launch. Oh, I kind of forgot to mention that, didn't I? Yeah, he kind of just stole a soul through a TV. He can do that. Magic! After Duelist Kingdom, Pegasus takes a major step back from the series, only making a small handful of appearances. But when he does return, he's shown to be a reformed man, offering help to Yugi and friends, such as paying for plane tickets for them or investigating dueling issues on their behalf. Pegasus continues his appearances into Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, where he continues his role as Illusion Industries president and even hiring one of Jaden's friends, Chumley, to work for him as a card artist for the future of Duel Monsters. I guess losing that millennia-old, ancient evil eye really can mellow a guy out. Maximillion Pegasus acts as both an unstoppable force and the immovable object to Yugi's adventure in Duelist Kingdom, and that is reflected extraordinarily well within his personality. Pegasus in the Duel Monsters show is incredibly vain and self-important. He dresses, acts, and speaks as though he's the most important person in the room, and quite honestly, he almost always is. Despite this, he doesn't appear to be outright egotistical or deep-rooted in his ways. While he appears to act like he's the best of the best, Pegasus is still very well-mannered and honorable, appearing that humility and being humbled are things he can and ultimately will process in a healthy way. This is reflected nicely when he chooses to release the souls of Mokuba and Seto Kaiba and Solomon Moto, after agreeing to do so after his loss against Yugi in the Shadow Realm. His choice of hairstyling and clothing also seemed to reflect this overall view of himself, appearing both professional and slightly over the top in a very fancy suit, but sporting a bright red color. This seems to be almost everyone else's take on him as well, since most of the characters in the show, namely Joey and Bandit Keith, openly speak about it, seeing his hair as effeminate. There is a louder side to Pegasus, however. This openly flamboyant, overly expressive side comes from his fascination with the wild and zany, cartoonish, if you will. As a child, and even well into his now adult years, Pegasus adored cartoons. One specific show from his childhood would even serve as the inspiration for one of his cards when it came to building his deck, which again will be touched on later. This silly side of Pegasus can often be tamed by his more serious side, though. A side of him filled with malice and a deep-seated desire to crush anyone who would lift a finger to stand in the way of him and his beloved wife. This side of Pegasus is more quiet than his expressive side, but is no less outwardly confident, such as when Bandit Keith attempted a forceful revenge on him. Despite being threatened with an open hand of air, because in the Japanese original this was actually supposed to be a gun, but 4Kids took that away, so now it looks like he's trying to hit Pegasus with an energy blast or something, I don't know. Anyways, despite being threatened and with clear intent from an enemy to harm him, Pegasus remains beyond collected and calm, simply dropping Keith to a hidden floor panel to dispose of him. It's this smile in the face of danger side of him that you would typically expect in a villain, but with Pegasus it seems to hit a new note on its own. All rolled up, Pegasus becomes a character both overly weird and overly serious, an overlap you don't typically see in most series, and especially not seen in the rest of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, with the exception of one character in a later series that I would gladly call my favorite. Pegasus is both menacing and humorous, in a way that treads the line of a well-written villain amazingly done. But don't worry, because we're not quite done covering Pegasus just yet. Pegasus's cards also reflect his overall personality in a way that fits him very well. Pegasus is known for playing both Toon cards, being the staple of his deck, alongside a much darker Illusion and Eyes Restrict deck, a balance between a lighter and darker nature within one stack of cards. The bulk of this deck, however, is the lighter and goofier Toon archetype, and all of this archetype is built around one card, Toon World. Toon World is a spell card that resides on the field when played, and has a cost of 1,000 life points. In the anime, when played, all cards you play while this card is on the field become Toon monsters, turning even the most serious and scary monsters into springy, silly, and hilariously animated versions of themselves. Toon monsters don't function like most monsters do in the Duel Monsters game, as while the Toons can attack you directly if you don't have any Toon monsters of your own, you cannot attack them, as their bodies are too malleable and outrageous, akin to Toon Force abilities like Popeye from old cartoons in real life. These aren't just any normal Toon monsters, however. You'll notice that all of the monsters currently shown are iconic cards that belong to well-known duelists around the world. Cards like the Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl, Blue Eyes White Dragon, and Summoned Skull all make appearances here. While only some of these are played during Duelist Kingdom, it makes you wonder, do all cards have a Toon version? Where's my Toon Hungry Burger? In the show, these monsters never saw circulation in the Duel Monsters game, due to being too overpowered and broken to see play, so Pegasus kept them to himself, knowing that if he would ever need to duel, he'd have access to an abundance of cards suited to him that only he can see the full potential of. He does play a darker side to his deck though. This side of his deck features cards that resort to extreme trickery, like Dragon Capture Jar or Doppelganger, and a general assortment of traps and monsters designed to turn an opponent's monster against them. The other ace of his deck, excluding Toon World as a base, would be Relinquished, a monster with 0 attack and defense points. Its special ability is, it can absorb one monster your opponent controls, gaining its attack and defense points, and if attacked, the absorbed monster is attacked instead, dealing damage to the original owner of that card. That card effectively makes attacking pointless. While it can be destroyed through many means, it still makes itself known as a boss monster in a deck already riddled with evil, and with Pegasus controlling it, it's certainly a card to be wary of. In a duel, Pegasus plays a very safe game, making use of the overall safety of Toon World to keep himself fully protected, and relying on the endless magic and trap cards to keep his opponent with as little moves as he can. And we're about to get into the main source of his dueling skill, his Millennium Eye. The Millennium Eye is one of the 7 ancient Millennium items, each with a unique magical power that grants its user unique and special abilities both in and out of duels. The Millennium Eye, as well as the other 6 artifacts, are capable of starting a shadow game, where the duelists involved not only duel for the win, but also for their souls. The Millennium Eye has been shown to seemingly project Pegasus great distances, such as when he held a shadow game with Yugi from inside a TV box in the card shop, despite Pegasus more than likely being very far away. But maybe he was just outside the front of the store, who knows. The bulk of the Millennium Eye's power, however, is to look into the mind of another person. This involves reaching back into their memory to the history of a character, or learn about something that motivates them, but could also be used simply to look through any memory as far back as Pegasus chooses. This is revealed when Pegasus looks through Joey's mind to discover what pushes him to duel, that being to save his sister's eyesight. But in a duel, the Millennium Eye can also allow its user to tell what card a person has just drawn. Without getting too deep into how it works, as it's never really touched on, I would say that when a person draws a card, they immediately think about it and what to do with it. Thoughts like this are what immediately get relayed back to Pegasus, as well as the basics like the card name and stats. Using this eye, Pegasus was able to defeat Seto Kaiba with ease. By announcing what card he had just drawn, Pegasus was able to shake Kaiba's faith in his cards and strategies before ultimately winning the duel with a different method. He also uses this ability on Yugi many times throughout the Duelist Kingdom arc, and it's only until the very end that Yugi learns how to counter it. He does this by swapping minds with the spirit of the Millennium Puzzle after placing a card face down. When Pegasus would try to read Yugi's mind, he wouldn't be able to see what card was placed down, as the spirit of the puzzle was also unaware. Pretty neat stuff, really. The Eye, at least in the anime, might appear to see far more than just into minds, however, as during Joey's duel with Bandit Keith, Pegasus seemed to clue into the fact that Bandit Keith was pocketing cards he needed underneath his sleeve in order to gain an edge. This could just be another case of mind reading, though. So what is it that makes Maximillion Pegasus so iconic to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise? Is it because he's the very first villain of the show? Is it because of his expressive personality or memorable deck of cards? I think it's a little of all of the above, plus the lasting effects that Pegasus has had on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise as it moves forward. Pegasus has made appearances not only in Duel Monsters, but Yu-Gi-Oh! GX too. He was also given a brief cameo as a memorial foundation in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Since then, he's made appearances in just about every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Video game, if not all of them. He is a playable character in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, and can play most of his toon cards as well. The name of Maximillion Pegasus comes with the very name of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. All of the cards in the original series were drawn up by him, after all. Even long after he's gone, the game still began with Maximillion Pegasus. Also, fun fact! After the Duelist Kingdom arc in the manga, Pegasus dies.